He sneered at a young girl, mocking that no black woman could ever be part of the special forces. The child froze, tears welling in her eyes, until the doors opened and her mother walked in wearing her uniform. Amaya Richardson hadn't been trying to prove anything. At 12 years old, she was in the shoe aisle at Dick's Sporting Goods in South Park Mall, Charlotte, talking with her best friend about school, sneakers, and her wish for a new pair of Nikes. Her tone was casual, but like kids often do, she suddenly said something that caught people's attention. "My mom's not picking me up until she finishes at Fort Bragg," Amaya explained while shutting a shoebox lid. "She's in Special Forces, so her schedule can get hectic." Her friend's eyes widened. "Wait, your mom's in the army? Like, actually fighting?" "Yeah," Amaya replied, as easily as if she were talking about her favorite cereal. "She's Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson. She just came back from an overseas mission." It should have been nothing more than a kid's small boast. But then a harsh laugh sliced through the space. It wasn't a kind chuckle, but sharp and dismissive, the kind meant to belittle. Just a few steps away, flipping through a rack of Under Armour hoodies, stood Officer Colton Reeves. Off-duty, wearing jeans and a Carolina Panthers t-shirt, his badge clipped to his belt like decoration. He looked like an ordinary weekend shopper, yet that cruel laugh gave him away. His laugh carried across the aisle, loud enough for shoppers to glance over. "Special Forces?" Reeves scoffed, shaking his head with a smirk. "Come on, kid. I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and I can tell you right now, your mom isn't running with the Green Berets. Especially not," he paused, his eyes narrowing. "Especially not someone like her." The words cut deep, but the tone cut deeper. Amaya's cheeks burned as her lips tightened into a thin line. Around them, curious eyes lingered. A mother with a toddler pretended to browse socks while sneaking looks. A couple of teens snickered behind their hands. Amaya's friend leaned closer and whispered, "Just ignore him. He doesn't know." But ignoring wasn't possible. Reeves wasn't finished. Reeves let out another chuckle. "Look, I get it. Kids like to make things up. My boy used to say his dad was Spider-Man, same deal. Cute, but not real." A wave of humiliation climbed Amaya's neck. She wanted to speak up, to defend her mom, but her voice refused to come out. Her hands shook as she shoved the shoebox back onto the shelf, the cardboard scraping loud against the display. "Why would you say that in front of everyone?" her friend whispered, worried. Amaya swallowed, forcing her voice out. "Because it's true." That small, steady defiance only earned more laughter. Reeves tilted his head toward the onlookers pretending to shop. "See what I mean? Cute kid spinning a fantasy. Sweetheart, it's fine to want your mom to be a hero, but you don't have to invent fairy tales." Fairy tales. The word struck like a slap. Her mother wasn't some storybook character. She was real, strong, and tougher than anyone Amaya had ever known. She was the woman who tucked Amaya in one week and then flew across the globe the next. But under the harsh fluorescent lights of that sporting goods store, Amaya had no way to prove it, and Reeves knew it. His smug grin said he thought he'd already won. "Tell you what," he said, tapping the badge clipped to his belt. "If your mom's really Special Forces, maybe she should swing by the station sometime. We could use a good laugh." Amaya's chest tightened. She thought of her mom's rough, calloused hands, the rows of medals lined up in their living room, the way she carried herself through airports with a presence that made strangers step aside. Her mother had risked her life more times than Amaya could even remember. And here was this man, tearing it all down with a smirk in front of an audience. When Amaya finally found her voice, it cracked. "You don't know anything about her." The words hung in the air. For a split second, Reeves's grin slipped. But he quickly recovered, clapping his hands together like the matter was closed. "Sure, kid. Whatever you say." Around them, shoppers exchanged glances, some amused, some uneasy, but no one spoke up. No one said, "She's telling the truth." The silence only deepened Amaya's humiliation. Her friend shifted nervously. "Amaya, maybe we should just wait outside." But Amaya couldn't move. Her sneakers felt glued to the linoleum floor. This wasn't only about being embarrassed. It was about her mother, her truth, her pride, and watching it mocked in public made her chest burn. Still, she dropped her eyes to the tiles, because what could she really do? She was just a kid. What Amaya didn't know, though, was that the very moment. While Amaya silently wished for her mother to appear, Nicole Richardson was already making her way inside, stepping through the mall's sliding glass doors in full uniform. Suddenly, the sporting goods store felt smaller. Every corner seemed crowded with eyes, all of them fixed on Amaya. She shifted uncomfortably, wrapping her arms around herself, but it did nothing to ease the pressure. The officer's voice carried effortlessly, echoing off shelves stacked with backpacks and racks of jerseys. Officer Colton Reeves leaned against a display like he had all day to waste, as if this was his personal entertainment. "You know," he began with a half-smile that looked more like a sneer, "people don't understand the kind of training it takes to get into special forces. Years of brutal work, combat missions, the best of the best. It's not exactly something you brag about at PTA meetings." He chuckled, shaking his head. "And you expect me to believe your mom is one of them?" The words coiled in Amaya's chest like a knot. She wanted to explain, to tell him about the months her mom spent away, the handwritten letters in pencil because phone calls weren't always safe. But she couldn't, not under his glare, not with strangers hovering like an audience waiting for a performance. Her best friend, Kane Torres, glanced nervously at the other shoppers. "We should just go," she whispered again. But Amaya shook her head. Her throat tightened, yet she pushed the words out anyway. "I don't care if you believe me. My mom doesn't need your approval." That response should have ended it. But Reeves wasn't the kind of man who let a child have the final word. He stepped in closer, lowering his voice just enough to feel personal, though still loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Listen, sweetheart. I know you want something to be proud of, but inventing stories isn't the way. People are only going to laugh. And honestly, a little girl like you has no idea what real sacrifice is." Amaya's ears burned. The shelves in front of her blurred as tears she refused to release stung her eyes. Kaylin reached for her sleeve, but Amaya pulled away, her fists tightening at her sides. From across the aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered, "Let the kid speak, man." But his voice was too soft to matter, and Reeves paid it no attention. Amaya swallowed hard and pushed her voice out again. It trembled, but was strong enough to be heard. "You're wrong about her. You're wrong about everything." Reeves let out another laugh. But this one carried no humor, it was the smug laugh of someone certain he had already won. He glanced around the store, soaking in the attention. He looked around almost as if inviting the crowd to join in on the joke. "Wrong, kid. I've stood beside real heroes. I've met soldiers, the ones who actually go overseas and face the dangerous stuff. And believe me, they don't look like your mom." That last line hit harder than anything else he had said. Amaya froze, her face burning with both shame and anger. She knew exactly what he meant, and so did everyone listening. Kaylin gasped. "That's not fair," she blurted. "You don't even know her." Reeves shifted his gaze to her, his grin stretching wider. "And you do? What, did you two sit around trading war stories? Please. I've been in uniform longer than you kids have been alive. I think I know the difference between reality and make-believe." Kane shrank back, but Amaya refused to move. Her hands trembled, yet she stood firm. "You'll see. She's coming." The officer smirked. "Sure she is. Maybe she'll parachute right through the skylight, huh? He chuckled, shaking his head like the joke was too good to pass up. Don't worry, kid. You'll learn. The world's rough. Better to face the truth now than keep living in fairy tales. Around them, shoppers whispered, some shaking their heads, others slipping out phones to record. Amaya noticed a woman pretending to flip. A woman pretending to browse yoga pants angled her phone just slightly toward them. Near the checkout, a teenage boy nudged his friend and pointed. The weight of humiliation pressed down on Amaya like a heavy backpack. For the first time, she wished she hadn't spoken at all. Maybe she should have stayed quiet, kept her mom's life private the way Nicole always asked. But the image of Reeves smirking, of strangers believing his story instead of hers, made her chest burn. She quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and lifted her chin. You'll see, she said again, firmer this time. The officer leaned back against the rack of hoodies, arms crossed like a man closing a case. We'll see, huh, he smirked. All right, then. I'll wait. The silence that followed was louder than the music coming from the store's speakers. Seconds dragged out, the crowd restless yet hooked. Some watched to see if Amaya would break, if she would shrink away in shame. She didn't. But while Amaya stood her ground, holding back tears, her mother was already striding past the food court, boots echoing against the tile floor, turning the corner that would change everything. Amaya's heartbeat thundered so loud she thought the whole store could hear it. She stayed rooted in front of the sneaker shelves, though every part of her screamed to run. She wanted to vanish, to rewind time to the moment she had opened her mouth. If only she had just said, "My mom's busy." None of this. Strangers stared at her now as if she were the unwilling star of a play she never agreed to perform in. Officer Colton Reeves stood there looking entertained, like this was nothing more than a lazy afternoon comedy. He rocked back on his heels, arms folded, that smirk fixed in place. You're awfully quiet now, he said, as though starting to believe she might have stretched the truth. The words cut deep. Amaya kept her eyes down, but his voice pulled her back up every time. Whispers swirled from the aisles around her. Why's he going after her like that? Someone muttered. Maybe the kid did make it up, another voice answered. Low, but not low enough. Kane tugged on her sleeve again. Amaya, please. Let's just wait for your mom outside. You don't have to keep answering him. But Amaya's chest burned, she couldn't tell if it was anger, shame, or both. I'm not lying, she whispered, mostly to herself. Reeves leaned in, lowering his voice just a notch. Look, I'm trying to help you save face. You go around telling stories like this, and people will laugh. Not everyone's going to be gentle about it. You'd be better off sticking to the truth, Reeves said. Your mom works hard. She takes care of you. That's enough. No reason to pretend she's some kind of war hero. Her fingernails dug into her palms. Pretend. The word echoed in her mind. Pretend, as if the nights she cried into her pillow missing her mom were make-believe. Pretend, as if the medals in the shadow box at home were nothing more than souvenirs. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not because she doubted her mother, but because she doubted herself. Maybe she shouldn't have spoken so casually. Maybe she had brought this on herself. Maybe she was the reason strangers now treated her mom's life like a joke. She bit her cheek hard enough to sting. Don't listen to him, Kaylin whispered. You know what's true. But it didn't feel that way. Truth didn't matter when no one believed it. Reeves shifted his weight, scanning the store like a man playing to an audience. Tell you what, he said with a laugh under his breath. If your mom actually walks in here wearing a uniform, I'll buy you those sneakers myself. He gestured toward the wall of shoes. Until then, maybe keep the fairy tales at home. Fairy tales. Again. The word blurred her vision, but she refused to blink. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby with a basket of clearance shirts finally spoke up. "She's just a kid," the woman said firmly. Reeves turned his head slowly, eyes locking with hers. "And I'm just telling her the truth. Better she hears it now than keeps embarrassing herself." The woman frowned but dropped her gaze, shaking her head. No one else said anything. Amaya's stomach churned. Why wouldn't anyone defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to just stand there and watch instead of? Why wouldn't anyone just say she was right? Her mother's words echoed in her head, "Courage isn't always loud, Amaya. Sometimes it's just standing tall when you feel like shrinking." But standing tall felt impossible when the floor itself seemed to press her down. She pressed her lips together until they hurt. "You'll see," she whispered again, her voice unsteady. Reeves sighed, looking almost bored. "Kid, I've heard it all before. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents, you name it. Every time, it's the same thing. Kids wanting to feel special. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth? The truth doesn't need defending." His words cut deep. Because wasn't that exactly what she was doing? Defending. And if truth was so clear, why did it feel like she was already losing? Kaylin suddenly stepped between them, her small frame trembling. "You're being mean. She's not lying." Reeves raised a brow. "And how would you know?" "Because I've seen pictures," Kaylin shot back. "Her mom's in uniform. She's got medals." She faltered, realizing how weak the words sounded against his disbelief. Reeves let out a low chuckle. "Pictures? Anyone can buy a uniform at a surplus store. Doesn't make it real." Amaya clenched her jaw. She hated how he had a comeback for everything. Hated how each word he spoke made the crowd lean in closer, as if his version of the story made more sense. Her knees wobbled, but she forced herself to stand taller. "You'll see," she repeated for the third time, the words stronger now. Reeves tilted his head, smiling like a man humoring a child. "All right, I'm waiting." The crowd wasn't whispering anymore. They were just watching. The air grew heavy with expectation, each second dragging out like an hour. Amaya's chest tightened, her thoughts raced, her palms slick with sweat. Then she heard it, faint at first, the steady, deliberate sound of boots striking tile. What Amaya didn't know yet was that her mother's arrival wouldn't just silence the laughter. It would turn the entire store upside down. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance slid open with a hiss, letting in the noise of chatter and footsteps from the food court. Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson strode through, her posture commanding attention without a single word. Her camouflage uniform was crisp, patches catching the overhead light, her beret tucked neatly under one arm. She had just come from a ceremony at Fort Bragg and decided to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She hadn't expected to walk into a scene. From across the store, Amaya spotted her instantly. Relief surged so fast through her chest it nearly knocked the breath out of her. Her heart leapt, but fear rose just as quickly, because now her mom was about to see everything. Nicole's boots struck the polished tile in a rhythm that never wavered. Her gaze swept the racks of athletic wear, the line of shoppers, and then landed on the small knot of people in the sneaker aisle. Her daughter stood there, face flushed, fists clenched. Beside her, Kaylin looked both frightened and protective. And across from them, Officer Reeves leaned back as if he owned the floor. Nicole's jaw tightened. She crossed the aisle, her uniform pulling every eye in the room as shoppers instinctively moved aside. Amaya's throat went dry. She wanted to run straight into. Kaylin's eyes widened, almost in awe. Reeves shifted on his feet, the confidence slowly draining away. "I didn't mean anything by it," he muttered. "Just thought it was unusual, that's all." Nicole tilted her head slightly. Unusual doesn't mean impossible. It only means you haven't seen it. Maybe the problem isn't me being here, it's that you never imagined I could be. Her voice was calm, but the words landed harder than any shout. Amaya looked up at her mother, pride swelling in her chest. She wanted Reeves to speak now, to try and push back, but he didn't. His mouth opened, then closed, his smirk gone at last. The woman with the clearance basket whispered to the shopper beside her, "She's the real thing." The teenage boy at the checkout muttered, "No way. That's legit." And for the first time all afternoon, Amaya breathed without feeling the whole world pressing against her. Nicole rested a steady hand on her daughter's shoulder, then turned back toward Reeves. "Next time you think about laughing at a child, remember, truth doesn't need your permission to exist." Reeves's throat tightened. He gave a stiff nod, his earlier swagger scattered like dust. But what he didn't realize was that the moment wasn't over. Nicole wasn't finished making her point. The store air grew heavy. No one moved. No one pretended to browse. Every shopper nearby had turned toward the sneaker aisle, their eyes fixed between the officer's rigid stance and the woman in uniform.